How is the year shaping up for the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, do you think?
Good to be back, Kieran. Well, this is going to be a very big and challenging year for Scott Morrison. Anyone who thinks this will be a walk in the park doesn't see what's happening. Just have a look at the agenda. The entire country's got to be vaccinated by October, with all the potential problems involved in that. Then we've got economic recovery. The recovery is looking good in terms of a V-shaped recovery, but it's going to be challenging in terms of jobs, in terms of businesses, and in terms of the pressure on living standards, particularly with JobKeeper being phased out. We've got the challenge of China. The strategic issue in the region is dangerous and unpredictable. We've got China's trade retaliation against this country, and there's no sign that that's going to go anywhere except get worse. And then Scott Morrison's got to navigate the climate change issue. So that's the framework, and it's going to be a very daunting and challenging framework. I guess the other point to make is Morrison's style. Morrison last year stamped his style as Prime Minister as a middle ground pragmatist. And he's more in the middle ground than either Tony Abbott or Malcolm Turnbull. So that's the style and approach we'll see from Morrison this year.
The big reshuffle for Anthony Albanese, how's his leadership looking at the start of 2021?
Well, look, I think Labor has not yet fully come to grips with its 2019 election loss. And it's got two big issues. One is the leadership. The leadership is being canvassed. And this reshuffle is seen in the context of the leadership. There's no question at all about that. There are many potential contenders and no rival as yet. Labor, though, is still competitive. The most recent news polls have had the government ahead 51-49. Well, given the advantages of incumbency, that shows a competitive position for Labor. There is concern about Albanese's capacity to cut through, and the next few polls, particularly the next few news polls, are going to be really important. The other big thing for Labor is the policy framework, and this is not sorted out. What is the policy framework that Labor will take to the next election? And Bill Shorten highlighted this the other day. They went too radical in 2019. The risk is that they're too cautious at the present time. So Labor as a whole has got to sort that out. That's not just an issue for the leader.
And to the United States, President Biden's first week or two. What's your take on his priorities and his moves thus far?
I think in foreign policy terms, we'll see a focus on Asia and away from the Middle East. And if you look at the team, Jake Sullivan and Kurt Campbell, both of whom are very well known to Australia, I think they're going to be tough on China, but anxious to avoid depicting China as the enemy. The approach Biden takes to China will be critical. And one of the issues here is whether Chinese President Xi starts to put Biden under pressure, decides whether he wants to test Biden as a new president, given that we can see that China is really taking over Hong Kong in an incredibly brutal fashion. It's now playing military war games against Taiwan in a threatening fashion. So one of the questions is how the US-China relationship plays out. In the trade sense, of course, the risk for Australia is that the United States, the Biden administration, might do deals with China that isolate Australia further in terms of the difficulties that we face. So I think the strategic challenges and the trade challenges and the way the Biden administration handles these are going to be absolutely critical for Scott Morrison in Australia.
And also critical for the US and Australia is that all-important vaccine and the rollout, Paul. That's central to everything.
Well, the problem here is that Scott Morrison can't completely control this. He can't completely control imports of the vaccine to this country. We've seen the EU is now playing vaccine nationalism. What will be important is local production through CSL. Morrison is putting a lot of store by this. I think the politics of the vaccine are that he's got to try and get a consistent rollout. One can imagine all the emotional and administrative problems that could be involved, but above all, the government's got to ensure that it doesn't make firm commitments that it can't meet. It's got to be careful about what it says. And I think you see this already in terms of what Scott Morrison and Greg Hunt are saying.